On the morning of October 1st, 1946, the world held its breath. Outside the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, footsteps echoed down the long, cold hallways, where 21 men were about to face the verdict of history. These were not ordinary criminals. They were the architects of terror, the generals and ministers of Adolf Hitler's Third Reich, the machine that set the world ablaze. When the sentences were read, silence filled the courtroom. 12 of those men were condemned to death. Among them, Alfred Jodl, one of Hitler's most trusted generals. He had signed orders that paved the way for millions of deaths and carried out the Führer's will with chilling precision. His execution would become one of the most painful and unsettling moments in the closing chapter of World War II, a grim symbol of justice served. And so, if you're ready to uncover the shocking rise, fall, and haunting punishment of the general who stood beside Hitler until the very end, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is Fleek of History, and today we're bringing you inside the dark heart of the Nuremberg trials. The making of a soldier. Alfred Jodl's story begins far from the battlefields, in Würzburg, Bavaria, on May 10, 1890. He was born out of wedlock, an accident of love that carried deep social shame in the rigid German Empire. His father, a proud career officer, refused to marry Alfred's mother at first, not because of emotion but because of status. She was a farmer's daughter, considered unworthy of a Bavarian officer. They didn't wed until 1899. Only then could Alfred, already a young boy, officially bear the family name Jodl. He grew up in the shadow of military tradition, disciplined, ambitious and obsessed with honor. His uncle Friedrich Jodl was a philosopher. His brother Ferdinand would also become an officer. For Alfred, the army wasn't just a profession, it was destiny. In 1910, at just 20 years old, he joined the 4th Field Artillery Regiment of the Bavarian Army. Brilliant, precise and serious beyond his years, he quickly earned the respect of his superiors. 2 years later, he rose to lieutenant. And when Europe exploded into the First World War in 1914, Jodl marched to the front lines. He fought in the bloody Battle of Saarburg, where he was shot in the thigh, one of the lucky few to survive. By 1916, he'd earned the Iron Cross, both first and second class. His courage was unquestioned. But by the time the war ended in 1918, that courage had been wasted in a slaughterhouse. Germany was humiliated. Millions dead. The Kaiser gone. The Treaty of Versailles stripped the country of its pride, its land, and its army. The Reichswehr, once a force of over 4 million men, was cut down to just 100,000. Like many soldiers, Jodl looked at the ashes of the fatherland with anger and shame. The seeds of bitter revenge had been planted deep, the rise of a hidden machine. Through the chaos of the Weimar Republic, Jodl stayed in uniform. Calm, professional, and politically cautious, he didn't chase headlines, but he quietly helped rebuild Germany's strength behind the scenes. In 1924, he joined the Ministry of the Reichswehr in Berlin, where strategy and planning replaced the noise of battle. By 1932, he caught the eye of a man who would change his life forever, Wilhelm Keitel, one of the top figures in the German High Command. Jodl became his close aide and later his deputy. Then in January 1933, Adolf Hitler seized power. To Jodl, Hitler's rise wasn't madness, it was salvation. The new regime promised to tear up the hated Treaty of Versailles and restore German pride. For a soldier devoted to order and discipline, the Führer's message was irresistible. But Hitler's rearmament plans were illegal under international law, so Jodl and his colleagues began rebuilding in secret. They disguised military programs as sports clubs, used glider associations to train pilots, and organized hiking groups that drilled like infantry units. Slowly, in defiance of the world, Germany prepared for war again. By the time Europe realized what was happening, it was too late. Power and loyalty in 1938, Hitler created the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the High Command of the German Armed Forces, to centralize control over the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Keitel became chief of the High Command, with Alfred Jodl as his right-hand man. Together, they were part of Hitler's inner circle, the men who planned how, when, and where to strike. When Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, Jodl was the one overseeing operations. That invasion lit the fuse of World War II. Within weeks, Poland was crushed and divided between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Jodl's efficiency made him indispensable. He soon directed invasions of Norway and Denmark, codenamed Operation D. Weserübung, the campaign that secured Germany's access to critical shipping and resources. Later that same year, he drew up plans for the attacks that would bring Western Europe under Nazi control. As France fell, Jodl rose sharply in rank and influence. Promoted to general, he became one of Hitler's closest military advisors, overseeing major strategic decisions. But there was something chilling about Jodl. He was the perfect bureaucrat of war. Calm, obedient, and unshaken by moral questions. When Hitler ordered atrocities, Jodl didn't argue. He signed the papers. The orders that stained history among. The documents that condemned Jodl at Nuremberg were his signatures on two horrific orders, each a direct violation of humanity and the laws of war. In June 1941, just before Operation Barbarossa, he signed the Commissar Order, a command that every captured Soviet political officer be executed immediately, no matter the circumstance. No mercy, no trial. Less than a year later, he signed the Commando Order, authorizing German troops to kill Allied special forces on sight, even if those soldiers had surrendered. These decisions sentenced thousands to death, not in combat, but in cold blood. And though Jodl later claimed he was merely following orders from above, his detailed notes showed full awareness of their consequences. In the twisted hierarchy of the Third Reich, obedience had replaced morality. Fractures in the war machine. By 1942, Germany's victories began to fade. The invasion of the Soviet Union stalled. The harsh winter crippled Nazi troops, and Jodl found himself locked in tense arguments with Hitler. Jodl, the disciplined planner, saw the crumbling logistics and overstretched divisions. Hitler, drunk on his own myth, ignored him. Their most heated clashes came before Operation Blue, a disastrous summer offensive in southern Russia. Jodl warned that the army was too weak to split its forces, but Hitler dismissed his warnings. When Stalingrad fell, hundreds of thousands died, and Jodl's doubts turned to private despair. Still, he remained loyal. Even as Hitler's orders became more irrational, hold every position, fight to the last bullet, Jodl obeyed. Some historians call it loyalty. Others call it cowardice. The collapse by the summer of 1944, Allied bombers pounded Germany's cities into rubble. When a group of officers attempted to assassinate Hitler on July 20th, Jodl was at the Wolf's Lair headquarters and narrowly survived the blast. Hitler's retaliation was swift. Nearly 5,000 executed. That autumn, with Soviet forces approaching, Jodl ordered the forced evacuation of civilians in northern Norway and the burning of their homes, part of Operation Northern Lights. Entire villages vanished in smoke, a desperate scorched earth policy to slow the Red Army. As Berlin fell in April 1945, Jodl stayed at his post, even as the world collapsed around him. Hitler's suicide came as no surprise. Within days, German radio declared the Führer fallen in battle. Karl Dönitz, Hitler's brief successor, sent Jodl on a final mission to negotiate Germany's surrender. On May 7, 1945, inside a schoolhouse in Reims, France, Jodl signed the first document of unconditional surrender. For the man who had planned the rise of Nazi power, it was a bitter finale. Captured and tried British troops arrested Jodl on May 23, 1945. Within months, he stood in the same courtroom where his former masters would face justice. The Nuremberg trials. The charges were overwhelming. Conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, waging wars of aggression, war crimes and crimes against humanity. Jodl's defense: he claimed he was a soldier, not a policymaker, that he was bound by oath to obey, that he had no knowledge of concentration camps or the Holocaust, but the evidence said otherwise. He had attended briefings describing deportations, starvation policies, and the executions of prisoners. He had approved orders that erased entire villages. The tribunal was not swayed by pleas of ignorance. The sentence on October 1, 1946, the judges read the verdict. Alfred Jodl, guilty on all 4 counts. Sentenced death by hanging. He requested execution by firing squad, a soldier's death, but the court denied him that honor. These were not military crimes. They were crimes against humanity. A night of reckoning. In the early hours of October 16, 1946, in Nuremberg prison, the condemned were awakened one by one. Rudolf Hess, Hermann Göring, Wilhelm Keitel, Alfred Jodl all awaited the same fate. As guards escorted them to the gallows inside a converted gymnasium, witnesses noted Jodl's composure. Dressed in his grey uniform, he appeared calm, detached even. When asked for final words, he replied firmly, "I salute you, my eternal Germany." The trapdoor opened, but the drop was miscalculated. Instead of an instant death, the rope failed to break his neck. Jodl's body convulsed violently, gasping for air, clawing at nothing. It took 18 long minutes before the doctor pronounced him dead. His body was cremated, and his ashes scattered in the river Isar. A cold end for a man who once believed his name would live forever. Legacy and reflection, for decades. Debates raged about Alfred Jodl's guilt. His second wife, Louise, fought to have his name cleared, arguing he was a scapegoat, a soldier obeying orders beyond his control. In 1953, a German tribunal briefly annulled his Nuremberg conviction, but it was soon reversed. The judgment stood. History does not remember Alfred Jodl as a hero, or even as a villain with passion. He was something more disturbing, a loyal technocrat of destruction, a man who never questioned the morality of his cause, only its efficiency. He is proof that evil doesn't always come shouting. Sometimes it wears a uniform, sits at a desk, and quietly signs its name. Outro and call to action. The story of Alfred Jodl reminds us that obedience, when stripped of conscience, can destroy civilizations. War begins not only with guns, but with silence, compliance, and men who simply follow orders. If this story gripped you, don't let history fade into dust. Share this video, drop a comment on what shocked you most, and subscribe to Fleek of History for more untold stories of power, justice, and consequence. Because understanding the past isn't about guilt, it's about guarding the future. Remember, history doesn't repeat itself. People do.